The final mailbag question we have is from Micah B. Millard on Instagram. And his question is, make a convincing case for Felix Hernandez to be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame.
So you can make a case. I don't think Felix is going to end up getting in. I just don't know if he quite sustained dominance for long enough to do it. But if you do want to make a case, most 50 WAR pitchers seem to get into the Hall of Fame. More often than not, that happens. Felix was a couple percentages shy of 50 wins above replacement for his career. Here's an example. Jim Kaat of the Twins. He pitched through the 60s, the 70s, tiny bit into the 80s. He pitched for 25 years. He threw a lot more innings and pitched for a lot longer than Felix did. Yet the two had nearly the same career WAR. Felix has the lower career ERA. Felix has a Cy Young where Jim Kaat doesn't. Felix also has 6 top 10 Cy Young finishes. Kaat had 2. So if you want to compare Felix Hernandez to some other guys that are in the Hall of Fame, you can do it. And there are cases, but it's still going to be a tough case.
The difference is now that Felix will get hurt because he didn't pitch enough. I would say back in the day, I mean, you could go back into the 1900s, anytime there when guys were getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. I think the bar was a little bit lower to make it in the Hall of Fame. There are some players in the Hall of Fame who are, in fact, average players. So if you go off of that theory, sure. But modern day, we have a lot of statistics available to us, and the process to get into the Hall of Fame is evolving, that it just is less likely based on the volume that Felix has pitched. It is less likely. There's a few stats you could cherry pick and make a case for Felix. For example, he has more strikeouts than a notable modern Hall of Famer, Roy Halladay. He's got more Ks than he does. He's got more Ks than my namesake in the Hall of Fame, Christy Mathewson. Pitched in a different era. However, he's got more strikeouts than him. He's more strikeouts than Jim Morris and a bunch of other Hall of Famers. How about a true modern example? These guys have been compared quite a lot when they were pitching. He has pitched more innings than Clayton Kershaw. Do you know that? Clayton Kershaw is a slam dunk Hall of Famer.
That's actually kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
More innings than Kershaw?
Now, Kershaw's the better pitcher, no doubt. He's got 4 Cy Youngs. He's got an MVP. I wouldn't argue that for a second. Clayton Kershaw will go down as one of the 3 greatest left-handed pitchers of all time. He's insane.
Correct.
But if we're talking about volume, I mean, Kershaw's getting in without much of an issue. He's going to get in the high 90s of votes when he gets on the ballot, when he eventually retires. And he'll retire soon. He could retire with less innings than Felix. But Felix has pitched more innings than him, believe it or not. How about a higher? Here's a niche stat. It's called adjusted WAR 7. So WAR 7 takes your best 7-year stretch of WAR and accumulates it together into one number. That stat is helped used to calculate JAWS, which Jay Jaffe came up with, where you add a player's career WAR, his WAR 7, you add them together and you divide them by 2. So you can measure how much better was this player outside of their peak 7 years. And it helps, I'd say, raise the bar for guys who had an amazing 7 years and lowers the bar for guys who had great long careers but weren't as good at their peaks. So that's what that number does. So adjusted WAR 7 accounts, it tries to adjust the pitchers used to throw 350 innings. It essentially caps your season for the old guys at 250 innings and makes it more favorable for modern pitchers who don't throw 250 innings. Here are some guys who Felix has a higher adjusted WAR 7, where he ranks 65th after adjusting for some of these inning counts, by the way. 65th all-time, and there are 66 pitchers in the Hall of Fame, might I note. 66. And Felix, on this list, is 65th. Do you think Garrett Cole's going to be a Hall of Famer?
He's trending that way.
He's trending that way. Well, Felix has a higher adjusted WAR 7 than he does. That's one thing to note. He's got a higher adjusted WAR 7 than, you might have heard of this guy, Nolan Ryan. Yeah?
Yeah, that guy was half decent.
And plenty of other Hall of Famers. Felix has a higher adjusted WAR 7 than. So it's not impossible to make a case for Felix. It's not. I don't think it's a slam dunk case. He probably could have used 3 to 4 more peak Felix seasons or close to peak Felix seasons. Then he would have an almost certain case for the Hall of Fame. The problem is Felix spent a few years in the middle and then a couple of really bad seasons at the end, which left a sour taste in many of our mouths in terms of how he's getting in the Hall of Fame. But it's not impossible. You know, there's only 28 guys who have appeared in as many or more of the top 5 in Cy Young voting appearances. That's it. That's something.
It's really good. Yeah. I mean, if you want to just use the Harold Baines meter, Felix is getting in. I've seen people on Twitter talk about that a lot. When any player passes the Harold Baines meter, meaning you surpass 38.8 career wins above replacement, aka WAR, like, people will be like, he passed the Baines meter, he passed the Harold Baines meter, because Harold Baines got in with less than 40 wins above replacement for his career. I think a lot of people feel like Harold Baines probably wasn't a Hall of Fame caliber player. But if you want to use that for Felix, you can. Harold Baines played 22 years. Felix played 15. And when you look at Felix's peak, even though he probably could have used more of a 10-year stretch of dominance, that 7-year stretch of dominance he had from 2009 to 2015, he was one of the game's best. He was in the top 3 to 4 pitchers in baseball year after year. He's right up there with Kershaw. He was right up there with others. And the fact he has 6 top 10 Cy Young finishes says a lot. I do wonder if his case would be elevated had the voters actually gotten it right in 2014 and given him that Cy Young over Corey Kluber. If he had that second Cy Young right now, you think people look at him different?
It would help because that list is pretty exclusive. I think there's less than 10, right? Less than 10 guys who've won multiple?
And Blake Snell's one of them. But
yeah, which makes it a really interesting. Well, Blake Snell's not a Hall of Famer, but which is why it's a really interesting list because Corey Kluber's not a Hall of Famer. But he's won multiple Cy Youngs and was one of the best pitchers of his decade. He unfortunately didn't have that length. Felix had more length than Corey Kluber did.
Right. Yeah. So there is a case. If you just heard the two of us dive into it and TJ really dove into it, there is a case. But I think both of us are in agreement here in saying it will be tough.
Yeah. It'll be tough for him. We hope he makes it. It'll be pretty cool. His speech would be pretty amazing, but unfortunately, I think Felix right now lands in the Hall of Very Good.
I would agree with that. Hey, if he gets in, are we going to Cooperstown?
I'm down.
I'd be down.
It'd be fun. It'd be fun.
Really fun.
When was the last time you were there?
Yeah. I've been twice. I think the most recent time was in high school.
Ooh, I was 10. Man, it's been a while. But I'll be down. If he makes it, I'm in.
Yeah.
We try.
Yeah, same here.